Man, what a journey it's been with this shirt, trying to find time to sew, getting ready for Martin's Station next weekend, with a very busy work schedule, and of course, parenting with two parents with full-time jobs. But it's coming along. It's getting there, right? So I've got the sleeves inset now, and we've talked about how that is done. We've got cuffs. We've got everything made. The final pieces that we have are is going to be the cape, which I've roughed out right here, and I've got pinned in place. And then we've got to do buttonholes, and lastly, we've got to do fringe. So let's talk about capes, buttonholes, and fringe. Okay, so in making a pattern for the cape of the shirt, I had to get a little creative. The directions that I've posted the link to in the description kind of indicates that there's supposed to be a cape pattern associated with it, but there's not. Not in the link that I've been able to find. And so the cape is the one thing where I kind of had to wing it. And here's how I did it. I have the neck opening of the shirt itself, right? And this cape is already pinned in place, but here's the neck opening of the shirt itself, right? And so then what I did was I took a piece of scrap material and I kind of figured out the length of the neck opening, like this, right? This is just a piece of scrap linen. So I could figure out exactly what the neck opening length was, and it's appropriate for my my neck size, a little tight, but not terribly so, and I can just move the ties a little bit further down and not tie them, sort of right at the apex of the neck. So once I figured out what this was, just out of a scrap piece of material, then I could come over to a piece of paper, and this happened to be freezer paper, and I just line up the distances here on this piece of freezer paper at the neck, okay, and I get that measurement there correct, and then from there all I did was take the freezer paper, fold it over like so I made everything nice and symmetrical, and open it back up, and I get this rough cape shape. And it kind of looks like, see if I can show you on the camera here, kind of looks like a big open mouth Pac-Man, if you will. I don't know how else to say that. I don't like big, like sort of long capes that flow over the shoulders too much. I'd like for it to be a little more smaller, a little more compact, but nonetheless visible on the final shirt. So that is how I did the cape pattern. Then I cut it out of the linsey woolsey material, and I've got it pinned onto the neck of the shirt. And in just a second, I'll show you how we pin it on and how we stitch it on, and then how we kind of turn it inside out. All right, so I've got the cape cut out here, you can see, and it is pinned on. Now the directions say to leave the edges raw, but I actually went in and whip stitched the edges just a little bit more, just to keep it from completely falling apart. It's certainly easier and faster than double folding, and it is gonna help stabilize that edge. This will be actually covered by fringe here in a little bit. So I've got the outside of the shirt that's facing the camera right now, and the outside of the cape that's actually facing the inside of the shirt. And here's why, and let's see if this makes more sense. The way I have it pinned in place is outside of the shirt, inside of the cape, right? And so the outside of the cape is facing the inside of the shirt, because once it's done being sewn, it's flipped over like that to the outside, and then that raw edge here is covered by the cape itself, right? And then that raw edge is a little more protected, and then we have the cape on the outside that we'll apply the fringe to. So as soon as I finish getting this cape stitched on, and I'll probably whip stitch this raw edge just as an extra form of stability, then we'll start on the fringe. Okay, now we've got our fringe pieces here. These fringe pieces are simply 2-inch strips of the material itself, folded in half and ironed along one edge. So they'll be stitched along this ironed edge here to the outside of the garment. And then all we're going to do is take these loose threads here and start pulling them to produce the decorative fringe. A lot of people ask, what was the purpose of the fringe? And I think there are some camps that believe the fringe may have had some practical purpose. I've seen one place where some folks believe that maybe it helped shed rain. I don't. I've been loosely involved in sort of outerwear garment industry practices for a number of years now, and tactical clothing and stuff, and I've yet to hear the idea of fringe being added to clothing as some sort of practical rain shedding measure. So I don't necessarily think that's true. I think it's purely decoration. I do think it does inadvertently, and I don't believe that the 18th century folks meant for this to happen or knew that it would happen, but I do think the fringe inadvertently adds a little bit of three-dimensional, adds some three-dimensional properties to the garment, which, as we know with camouflage, three-dimensional camouflage is actually pretty effective in certain instances. So again, I don't think that was something that they knew, but I do think it's something that it could apply to the garment depending on color. So this fringe will be applied to the sleeves on both sides. It will be applied to the shoulders of the garment. It will be applied down the front and around the base, and then I will stop there and see if I want to apply any to the cuffs themselves. Sometimes you'll see fringe applied to the cuffs and it's kind of fuzzy on the end. When my other hunting shirt that I normally wear is like that. Not sure I'm going to do that yet, but we will find out as I continue. And then the last thing we'll do is buttons and buttonholes. Oh, and I just realized I've got to sew up the ends of this cuff. All right, so you can see I've got one of the cuffs here, and I've got the buttonhole laid out right where I want it. And I just used one of my kids' pencils to do it. I think Taylor's chalk's probably a better option, but I don't have any of that. Now I'm going to use this Stanley chisel that I've got right here, and I've got a piece of wood and a piece of leather underneath just to give the chisel something softer to sink into. And that's what I'm going to use to cut my buttonholes. But before I do that, what I'm going to want to do is backstitch along the entirety of the perimeter of this buttonhole. And what that's going to do is help hold that linen together. So when I cut it with a chisel, that thread, as I do my buttonhole, will have something to sort of latch onto. So I'm going to backstitch this real quick and then cut this buttonhole open, and then I'll be back to show you what the buttonhole stitch looks like. Alright, so I've got this buttonhole opened up with the chisel there, and the next thing I want to do is start this buttonhole stitch. So I come in from the underside and I come up right next to that first stitch that I've done with a knot. I just want to simply take the thread and loop it over the needle and pull tight. And as I do that, you'll see a little knot form right there, and that makes the buttonhole stitch itself. And I just want to come in same place almost right next to it. Okay, So I want to make sure that I'm coming up through the material evenly on both sides. You can see that I am. Okay, and simply loop it over and close it up. So make sure that my tension is as even as possible in each thread or each stitch. Got a little bit too much thread here, I think. And just continue on and try to get them as even as possible. Now, we'll see how this turns out here shortly to see how even it is. But the main thing is that it becomes functional and that you have all of the loose threads captured in the buttonhole itself, and that there's not a lot of space between stitches. So get this finished up and we'll see how it works with the button. Okay, I'm all done with it. There you have the world's ugliest buttonhole. Still very, very functional. Everything is relatively evenly stitched. Clearly I need to work on my buttonholing a little bit. Probably some tips and tricks I can pick up from some professionals, but hey, for a hunting shirt, this doesn't look too terrible. This is a utilitarian garment, so I'm actually okay with this in terms of its overall professional appearance. If this were obviously a finer garment, that would not be the case. But yeah, here we go. So buttonholes are all done. Now I've got one last piece of fringe to attach, and this shirt will be done. Well, here it is. I finished it up just in time for Martin Station. Here it is, mid-May 2023. This place is just full of the sights and the sounds of the 18th century. Pretty much everywhere you look, you can just be enraptured by the vistas and the little details. Looking at log cabins, looking at a fort, looking at hand carts and wagons traveling by. It's truly, truly an amazing place. The hunting shirt turned out pretty good. Cape's a little small, so it's having a couple issues laying down on the shoulders here just a little bit. No big deal. I think that'll settle in over time. Been super comfortable to wear. I mean, just what a comfortable garment. A little warm. Linsey Woolsey may have not been the best choice for humid mid-May time out here, but it does breathe pretty well, and it'll certainly be ready for winter. I think I may add another couple of ties. There's one original that has 3 ties, or remnants of 3 ties down the front, so I might actually do that here to help close it up, keep some warmth in the winter time. I really appreciate you all following me along on this series of making this hunting shirt, and I strongly encourage you to buy some material and go do one of your own. The worst thing you can do is mess it up. So take care. We'll see you next time on the Deerskin Diary.